Well, what's up again there, guys? Brian here, the 3 Topics Gamer, here to share with you another one of my top 5 list figures to share with you guys today. Now, as I'm sure some of you, or even all of you know, I am a massive PlayStation fanatic. I mean, I'm just hardcore to the bone. I mean, if you get a chance to ever see a tour video of my room, the first thing you're going to notice is just how much PlayStation is everywhere. I mean, there's PlayStation on my walls, there's PlayStation on my desk, there's PlayStation on my set, there's PlayStation on my... PlayStation is everywhere. I've loved PlayStation definitely since I was a kid, and think it's without question, the greatest provider of games in the history of this industry. But something special, really special about PlayStation. There's been a lot of really great franchises, but something that I haven't done up to this point is list what I think are my personal top 5 favorite PlayStation exclusive franchises. Now, there have been a lot of franchises that have come and gone throughout the history of PlayStation, and there's even been some that have cross over to other consoles, which we're not going to mention here. But these 5 exclusive console franchises are the ones that I think really define the best qualities that you can get from PlayStation. Now, I'm not going to ignore the fact that some of these have made the crossover to PC, because PC is its own thing. I mean, I view PC gaming like handheld gaming. You can't really count it. It's completely different. It's like comparing apples and oranges. So PC gaming is its own thing. Consoles gaming is another. Handhelds is another. But they're all different. They all have their strengths and weaknesses. But these 5 exclusive franchises I think are just my overall favorite. So before I get into my rankings, you do happen to enjoy this video by the end, please do not forget to like, share, and subscribe. Keep tracking me on my future videos. And here are the rules in terms of these franchises. Number 1, they have to at minimum be at least 10 years old. The second quality is they have to at least have 3 entries in their franchise. I don't think 1 or 2 games makes an overall franchise. At least give me 3 games, and that's about it. And the third is it just hasn't been able to cross over to other consoles. That's about it. Those are the rules. So starting off with number 5 on my list, I have to go from a franchise from Sucker Punch, and that is Infamous. I think Infamous is definitely one of the better open world games that I've played in across a PlayStation's lifespan. It had 3 great games in the forms of Infamous, Infamous 2, and Infamous Second Son. It had 2 little kind of expansion games. They had like Festival of Blood for Infamous 2 and then First Lap for Infamous Second Son, so I thought those were great. And I think it was a franchise that had its place in time, and I think went out on a very, very positive note. Now, I know there's some people that wish that the Infamous franchise had continued, but I don't think that's what makes PlayStation so special. I think the fact that they're always in a state of recreating itself and making franchises that last a certain amount of time, that way they can move on to other projects, I think is what always is a good way to keep your games fresh. And the fact that they have moved on to Ghost of Tsushima is something I'm very, very happy for, because I'll admit, I actually enjoy Ghost of Tsushima more than any of the Infamous games, even though I openly consider Infamous to be one of the best franchises in PlayStation's history. But it had its place in time, it had a great set of games, it never made a bad game in my opinion, and I think to this day it still stands up, which is why I would place it number 5 on my list. Going into number 4 is going to surprise some people, because it's a franchise that's been dead for a while. But I think something like it has to make somewhat of a return. And that franchise has to go to Killzone. Killzone also had a very, very extensive lifespan. It went through multiple different consoles, both on platform and handheld. It started in PlayStation 2 and you have to remember, it was a launch title for the PlayStation 4. So it actually made it to 3 generations and was also played on the PlayStation Portable and the PlayStation Vita. I think it was probably the strongest first-person shooter franchise that PlayStation had ever made. The only other one that stands out is Resistance, but I think that Killzone is a little bit stronger. And the reason that Killzone still sticks to me very much is I liked its world building, I liked its characters, I liked its action set pieces. It was very, very memorable and had an amazing soundtrack, especially for the 3rd game. And the reason why it still sticks to me today is I still think that to this day, I think one of our developers has to come up with a first-person shooter franchise again. PlayStation is seriously lacking. A lot of our games are platforms, and there's nothing wrong with that, or hack and slashes. But I think that PlayStation definitely needs a definitive first-person shooter franchise. Now, I would be totally happy if, Killzone or Resistance made some sort of comeback. But, since Guerrilla Studios, the creators of Killzone, is working on Horizon, and trust me, that that easily, I'd say maybe 5 or 10 years from now, could have the potential to be one of the all-time greatest franchises in PlayStation history. Without question, there's definitely the potential there. I still think that Killzone still is very memorable. It still has a strong place in my heart, and I openly do consider it to be the best PlayStation exclusive first-person shooter franchise that we've ever had. And I think something like that should make a return. And heck, even one of their games is in my legendary 10 out of 10 club. So that says a lot, which is why Killzone probably is going to be strong, holding the number 4 spot on my list. Going into number 3 is a franchise that is without question going to be on a lot of people's lists if they were to do lists like this, but I like the games, but I don't like the developers very much anymore. And that franchise has to go to Uncharted. There's no question that Uncharted is probably one of, if not the best PlayStation exclusive franchises that we've ever had. I do not like Naughty Dog at all. I don't like what that developer has become, and I can openly say that moving forward, I probably will never play another Naughty Dog game again moving forward. But I do acknowledge that the games that they have made up to this point, not acknowledging The Last of Us, because you guys know how I feel about those games. But Uncharted, definitely one of the best action adventure franchises of all time. Nathan Drake is easily an iconic character. I don't think he's necessarily the face of PlayStation as another character who is on this list is, but I definitely think he's probably the closest thing we've had to like a video game Indiana Jones since Lara Croft. I think that Lara Croft and Nathan Drake kind of go back and forth in terms of who was really the Indiana Jones of video game, but it's up to people's interpretation. They had an amazing set of games. 4 on console, 1 on handheld. That even though it was technically flawed, I still thought that Golden Abyss was a solid, great Uncharted game. Amazing action set pieces, great music, great performances. I mean, it had everything you could ask for from just a top tier franchise, and Uncharted still is. Now I will say that I am not going to go see that ridiculous over expensive fan made film that's coming out later next year. I'm going to be avoiding that like the plague, and I personally hope that Naughty Dog never tries to bring Uncharted back. I think they should just move on to other franchises, because I'm afraid if they try to bring it back with the current state that Naughty Dog is in right now, they're probably going to end up ruining the franchise, which is why I think it's best just leaving it alone in the past. It had an amazing run. It's definitely one of the all-time greatest, not just PlayStation exclusive franchises, but I think people would say one of the greatest gaming franchises of all time, and I just don't want them to go back and mess it up, which is why it's going to hold the number 3 spot on my list. Going into number 2 is a franchise that actually just had an entry come out on the PlayStation 5, and that is the Ratchet and Clank franchise. This, along with my number 1 favorite PlayStation exclusive franchise, is without question one of the longest running PlayStation exclusive franchises we've had to date. This is a franchise that started all the way back in the early PlayStation 2 days and made it to PlayStation 2, 3, 4. Was probably was definitely my system seller for 5, and was even on some of the on the portables. So this is a highly expensive franchise. One of the greatest platformers, one of the best shooters, amazing set of characters. I mean, Ratchet and Clank are just the perfect duo character, far better than Jak and Daxter. And the crazy thing is we haven't seen Jak and Daxter in some time, so I think we know who ended up winning that sort of debate in terms of who was the better duo between the two. I think that Ratchet and Clank has a great amount of heart, with a lot of action. Its visuals always improve with every generation, and the fact that it is still going strong to this day is just amazing. I mean, I can openly say that as of right now, Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart is probably going to end up being my game of the year for this year, and that is something that it very much well deserved. And I just cannot wait to see what this franchise is going to do moving forward, because trust me, as great as Rift Apart was, and it was, trust me, phenomenal game. The reason I bought a PlayStation 5, I have no doubt there's going to be more Ratchet and Clank coming to us in the future, or maybe even maybe a side story, since PlayStation likes to do that a lot. But that's why it holds the number 2 spot on my list. Now, going into number 1, it shouldn't surprise anybody, but I think that the greatest PlayStation exclusive franchise of all time, and the character who is without question the face of PlayStation, has to go to God of War. Much like Ratchet and Clank, this is a franchise that started all the way back on the PlayStation 2 days and went through PlayStations 2, 3, 4, reinvented itself on 4, and is continuing on 5, and is easily one of my most anticipated games of next year, just from what we've seen. Says a lot. I think its ability to constantly reinvent itself, especially for what they did with God of War 4, which I call it God of War 4, and God of War Ragnarok is God of War 5, so I don't know A lot of people don't acknowledge that. But I think that's the primary reason I think that God of War was able to get the edge on something like Ratchet and Clank. Because at least with the gameplay of Ratchet and Clank is pretty much very much consistent. They've never actually had to change it up. But the fact that God of War was able to reinvent itself, and that's something I didn't think it could do, was something that I think allows it to elevate. Now, don't get me wrong. Some of these franchises are in a constant state of changing, but the fact that God of War was successful in reinventing itself and adding elements that I didn't even think could work in a God of War game makes it surprising. You have an amazing story that even has parts of errors, and though it's unfortunate that apparently the Viking era is going to be ending with Ragnarok and will probably be going on to another era. I think is good because you don't want to spend too many time in one era. But it's just the team at Santa Monica Studios has truly made a phenomenal franchise that is practically almost unmatched in other departments. I mean, this goes, head to head with some of the major heavy hitter franchises like Halo and even Mario. I would say. I mean, it really does show the best that the PlayStation is capable of, and the fact that it is, it stayed so strong for so long is just an amazing testament to the quality of games that this game has been able to provide. It has never had a below great game. If I were really to compare all of the games that say Ratchet and Clank has, which I do think that Ratchet and Clank has more, and compare them to say God of War games, all of them are like 8 and up. I think they're just maybe yeah. I think I would definitely say like all the God of War games are definitely like B and up. They've never had like a C level game. And Ratchet and Clank has kind of had a few of those in its past, but those were mainly handhelds. But I think that without a question, God of War is the strongest PlayStation franchise that we've ever had. And I think that'll definitely continue on into the future. I mean, unless, something comes out and surprises me. But that's why overall I think that God of War is my all-time favorite PlayStation exclusive franchise of all time. It's not my favorite gaming franchise, but it is my favorite PlayStation exclusive franchise to date. And that pretty much defines why it is number one on my list. So that is my ranking of my top 5 favorite PlayStation exclusive franchise. Now, if you have 5 exclusive PlayStation franchises that you think are the all-time best, share your list with me and everyone else in the comments down below. And like always, thank you guys for watching. You're awesome, and I will catch you all next time.